Heyo everybody, Haku here with my review for episode 8 of Toaru Kagaku no Accelerator, or A Certain Scientific Accelerator. So this one, my first time watching it, I loved it. And then my second time watching it to go back and take notes, I loved it again, but I realized even more that this fell into the Index 3 problem of things just not making any sense. The writing being the writing just having certain things that don't really follow one another and just things that are kind of disconnected from each other, and it doesn't flow together, it doesn't make sense, and it's not one of those things where it's like, oh, it's so complicated I can't keep up. No, I watch tons of complicated shows. It's just that it's not that this is so complicated it's hard to keep up in a way that makes sense. It's just that some things legitimately just don't really seem to have a lot to do with one another, and are like needlessly complex without really meaning anything. But yeah, I loved watching it. It was basically just a full flashback episode to explain things with Esther and Hishigata and Hirumi, and I already thought that Esther was like such a great character, but now I like her and understand her even more after this. And I do understand Hirumi and Hishigata, but even with the explanation of their backstory, I found it kind of hard to feel bad for either of them, because they were still very bad people. They were still very trash people. Another thing is there was no opening or ending, so it felt like a very special episode too. But to go through it part by part, the sort of the motivation behind them is that Hishigata and Hirumi both want to sort of make level 6 a thing. Hirumi wants to be level 6 because, of course, she has sudden anime coughing blood disease. So she wants that to try to make her immortal, and he wants it kind of because she wants it, but she also acts like she wants it because he wants it. So she acts like the only reason she wants level 6 is because she's supportive of him and wants it to be sort of a sibling dream together, but really she has her own, very understandably selfish. I don't even necessarily want to call it selfish. She has her own reasons, but wanting to survive isn't necessarily a selfish one. But either way, they use various legendary objects in their tests on how to get there, and now they're moving on to necromancy. So we see that Hishigata did smoke, where we see now all the time that he's eating those lollipops, so I like that small detail. But yeah, they were even at that point experimenting on random innocent people, so it makes it hard for me to feel bad for Hirumi or anything, because she was willing to let tests happen on random innocent people for her own sake, and of course survival definitely would make you do things differently, but even so, they were just normal, innocent people that they were testing on and everything, all for her own selfish reasons. But we get the names for the 4 sort of pseudo-soul tags that Esther had, which were Kyuki, Hondon, Totetsu, and Tokotsu. And we've pretty much all heard them before, at least in passing. And here's one of the first things that doesn't necessarily make a whole lot of sense, or that doesn't really matter to the story, so it's a needless complexity thrown in there for no reason, is that Hishigata's testing if powers can be used without certain organs functioning in the body. And again, I'm going to say that this was in the writing, and that they didn't explain what the hell he was saying very well at all. Like, you can kind of get what he's saying, but they just didn't do a good job of explaining it. It doesn't really matter to the main plot, and it's just this weird complexity thrown in that doesn't follow. It's like, we have him testing this, we find out how he's making power stronger with the coffin, we have what's going on with Hirumi, and we have all these different complexities going on, but ordinarily in a story, all of them would fit together to make sense into one big picture, but really they're all separate things that don't really fit together or mean anything to each other at all. So they're kind of just needlessly thrown in there, and it's a very, very Index 3 sort of thing, where we didn't have this problem in the first 2 indexes or either of the railguns, but it's a problem we had in Index 3 where there were just things that just didn't fit together and make sense, and they were needlessly complex, and it feels like that's what this episode did. So we have a reference in one scene to the people from the first episode, a reference to the undress, which was cool. And we get the scene with Hirumi in the gym that was where I was first starting to think, is Hirumi just actually just this goofy, silly character, or is she manipulating Hishigata and Esther? And really, the story only makes sense if she is actually sort of aware of things and just pretending to be goofy and stuff because she's manipulating Hishigata and Esther. Hirumi's story only makes sense if she's a bad person manipulating them. But from there, we have more of Hishigata explaining how he's experimenting on just these random girls that they've got, so trash person, and he explains that what they're doing, again, it doesn't entirely make sense how it's related to shutting down the organs, but by increasing the perception of a person's size by putting their body into the coffin, into the pseudo-body, by sort of changing their perception of what their size is, it also makes their power larger, more powerful, more potent. But if they go too large with it, then the mind starts to realize, oh wait, this doesn't make sense, my body shouldn't be this big, and so it starts to lose its sense of self and lose its power. So yeah, and again, all of that makes sense, but it's not really... It makes sense on its own, but it doesn't tie in with the other stuff. So it seems kind of pointless almost. But yeah, Hishigata's in no rush because he believes in the future because of this. He's like, well, if we can just do this, once we refine it and everything, in the future anybody can be level 6. So Hishigata's not in terribly much of a rush. But then Hirumi starts saying, okay, let me in on this experiment, we gotta do it now. But Hishigata refuses to let her be involved until he can safely and accurately reproduce everything he's been doing. Which makes sense to him because he doesn't know about her condition. So then we get the reveal of the sudden anime blood coughing disease, but she had been choking a bunch beforehand, so you could kind of see it coming. And something that was really good, her death scene with the video and everything and the tank that she went in, her death scene was really, really cool. But basically she wants, after death, them to make her into a level 6. She's like, well, now I'm basically already dead, so you don't have to worry about safety or anything, just make me a level 6. And Hishigata, it's cool as well, where he was like, I was monitoring all of her vitals, I could have been able to tell that something was wrong, but I just blinded myself to it because I didn't want to see it, which is really cool and realistic of the character. So they put her in a coffin to keep her alive somehow, even though she was supposedly already dead. But she takes over the coffin, kills the others that were working with Hishigata, and reveals that the Takotsu charm is missing, so traps Esther in being like, okay, am I still alive? Am I Hirumi? Or am I Tokotsu? Have I already been dead and been taken over by the charm? But it shouldn't really matter if she's alive or not. Well, one, it's pretty obvious that she's dead. They said that her heart wasn't beating. She pretty much said she was dead. She had this immediate personality shift. It would make sense only that she was dead, unless Hirumi was evil and manipulating them all along, which on the other hand is the only way that Hirumi's character makes sense, is if she was evil and manipulating them all along. And if that's the case, then it shouldn't matter if she's alive or dead, because if she's alive, she was evil and manipulating Esther all along, and if she's dead, she's the evil Takotsu charm or whatever. So it shouldn't really matter necessarily to Esther either way. So, again, this is something that's needlessly complex, doesn't necessarily make sense in the following sequence of events. There's a whole lot of non sequiturs. So yeah, it's just kind of a mess. And, again, she should be obviously dead. But I guess there's the chance that she isn't and she was evil all along. So, again, it's one of those things where I loved watching the episode, but then going back through and actually looking at the story, it's kind of poorly written. There's a bunch of non sequiturs, a bunch of things that just don't follow and connect with each other. And even with that, there's a lot of things that just characters' motivations and actions just don't make any sense. Like, really, Esther... Like, that's the thing, because Hiruma's story is written in a way where, unless Hirumi is evil, as I've said a million times, and she was just manipulating Hishigata, manipulating Esther to get her way, unless that's the case, her story doesn't make any sense. The actions that she's taken and the things she's done don't make any sense, unless either that or she died and was taken over by Tokotsu, who is evil, in which case she's already dead and gone, so she's not really Hirumi anymore and hasn't been for a little bit anyway. So it's one of those things where the writing is just in a whole mess of problems that don't make any sense together, and it reminds me very much of the Accelerator and Last Order storyline from Index 3, which they took no time to develop and made no sense. It was always like Accelerator's trying to save Last Order in Index 3, but we were never explained why. We were never explained why Last Order was in danger to begin with, what was wrong with Last Order. None of that was ever explained, so it's just like Last Order is randomly in danger out of nowhere and Accelerator's trying to save her, but none of it ever makes sense because they never actually take the time to say what's wrong or anything. Up until like the very end. So yeah, I'd give it 7.5 artificial souls out of 10. Still kind of a high score because I did enjoy watching it. I think from a technical standpoint and the way that it was directed and animated and stuff, it was really good to watch. But storyline wise, yeah, it was just a whole mess of problems not fitting in with one another. But yeah, that's it. Thank you for watching the video. Like if you did like the video, and comment down there to tell me what you thought of this episode and what you thought of my thoughts on it. Subscribe for more. Toaru Kagaku no Accelerator, much more on the channel. Follow on Twitter if you want. I'll try to keep you updated there and stuff for the channel, or talk to you there. If you want a link to our Discord server to talk to me or more of us on Discord, then just ask and I can give you a link. And if you'd like to help support the channel and keep it going on Patreon, then link to the Patreon will be in the description. So yep, that's it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.